Big welcome to everybody joining us online. Welcome to our Speedway campus. Can we give it up this morning from Lenexa for our Speedway campus? We love you guys. One church, multiple locations. And before we dive into the word today, we want to take a moment on this Veterans Day weekend to honor our veterans who are with us today. So if you're a veteran, would you please stand up and allow us for a moment to say thank you and to honor you. We want to thank you for your service. Thank you for the sacrifices you made and are making, that your families are making. We honor you guys and gals today. I also want to acknowledge the fact, I know that in the midst of the government shutdown, it's impacted many individuals in our community and beyond. And if you want to help, we as a church, our pastoral team is praying for different ways that we might be able to get involved with food distribution or whatever those needs may be. But if you go to our impact page on our website, you can see some amazing organizations that we partner with. I think those are going to be right at the top of the page, where we can lean in as a church family and provide help in this season. So be looking out for that in the days ahead, and also just heading to our impact page to see ways that you can help. I also want to mention something. It was on our announcements before the service, but in 2 Sundays, we have something that we do every year coming up called our Harvest Offering. Our Harvest Offering, and it's a time where we encourage generosity in our church to think about, Lord, we want to give above what we've given in the past so we can go beyond where we've gone as a church. And we know that, man, generosity is an act of worship. It's an act of acknowledging that everything we have is from God, belongs to God, and we're giving back to God the first fruits of what He has given to us as an act of worship and faith, trusting that God is our provider. And God has always chosen, think about this, to advance the work of His church and His kingdom through the joyful generosity of His people. It's amazing. He's like, those who have been forgiven much, those who have experienced the grace of God, they freely give towards the mission and the work of God's kingdom through the local church. And so I want to encourage you over these next 2 weeks as we prepare our hearts for the Harvest Offering. I know my wife and I are praying about this as well. Our team is praying about this. Be asking God. Maybe for you, it's stepping in for the first time. You've never given toward the mission and vision and kingdom impact of Westside Family Church. Maybe it's a chance for you to step in for the first time and give. Maybe for some of you, it's a chance to step up and say, man, I want to increase the amount that we give on a monthly basis because God has blessed us and we want to bless the work of this church. And for some of you, God might be calling you to step out of the boat and to give radically and generously towards the mission of the church, because our church moves at the speed of our generosity and our faith. We move at the speed of our generosity and faith. So be praying about that as a family as we head into this moment in a few weeks. Okay, let's dive into God's word this morning. We are in week 2 of a series that I've titled Letters from My Future Self. Letters from My Future Self. And the premise of this series is simply this. If you could go back in time and write a letter to a younger, dumber, less experienced, version of yourself, what would you say? What would you tell yourself? What have you learned thus far? What have you learned about God? What has God been saying to you through the story of your life? Because life, we've learned, is one of the greatest teachers we will ever have. Experience is one of the greatest teachers that we will ever have. And yes, God speaks to us primarily through His Word. God speaks to us primarily through the Bible. He speaks to our hearts and our minds in times of prayer. He speaks to us through trusted advisors and friends, but he also speaks to us through the experiences of our lives. And if we look back, we can see some things and learn some things that God has been saying to us or teaching us all along. All along. And today, this topic, the topic that I want to hit on is forgiveness. If I could go back and write a letter to a younger version of Jonathan, I would tell myself very simply, choose to forgive. It's the title for my talk today. If you're taking notes, you can write that down, but choose to forgive, and I would add quickly. Quickly choose to let it go. Choose to let it go. And again, going back to the premise of this series, I want to say this: if you'll listen to your life, you'll hear the voice of God. That's what Frederick Buechner said, one of my favorite authors. We can hear the voice of God as we listen to our life and what has happened to us over the years. In the book of Job, Elihu talks about this, and he's talking to Job, and he says, I am young in years, and you are aged. Therefore, I was timid and afraid to declare my opinion to you. I said, let the days speak, and many years teach wisdom. But it is the Spirit in man, the breath of the Almighty, that makes him understand. So your days are speaking to you. Your years are teaching you wisdom, but it's the Spirit of God inside of us that helps us interpret what's happened to us, helps us see the hand of God as it's moving and working in our lives, even if we're unaware of it, even if we don't see it till we've made it through the situation. God is with us. He's carrying us through it, and he's teaching us things through our days and through our years all along the way. And I think one of the most important things we will ever learn is the lesson of forgiveness, choosing to forgive. It was massively important in the ministry of Jesus. In fact, one could argue it's the main reason that Jesus came to earth, was so that he, through his sacrifice on the cross, could offer forgiveness for the sins of the entire world. Forgiveness is something we all need. There's not a person in this room who doesn't need forgiveness. And if you've been alive long enough, maybe more than 5 minutes, you've probably been wronged in such a way that you need to extend forgiveness to someone else for the pain or the hurt they have caused you. In fact, the theme of forgiveness was so important to Jesus when he was teaching his disciples how to pray. He said, when you pray, and he's expecting us to go to God in prayer daily, all the time. He teaches them the Lord's Prayer. And right in the heart of the Lord's Prayer, he inserts the theme of forgiveness in Matthew chapter 6. It's like when you pray, give us this day our daily bread. So pray daily for your needs, whatever those needs may be. And forgive us our debts. Some translations say sins, as we have forgiven our debtors or those who have sinned against us. For if you forgive others, moving down to verse 14, if you forgive others their trespasses or their sins, your heavenly Father will also forgive you. But if you do not forgive others their trespasses, neither will your Father forgive your trespasses. Time out. Hold on, Jesus. What did you just say there? Is Jesus saying that your forgiveness, your salvation, is dependent on your ability to forgive others? I don't think so, because the Bible actually teaches that we are saved by grace through faith. We are not saved based on our ability to extend forgiveness. However, if you read, you have to read the Bible in context of the whole Bible, and Matthew 18 really unpacks this. That's where we're heading today. But what I do think Jesus is saying is simply this: if you have experienced the forgiveness of God in your own life, you will be the type of a person who forgives others. The key to living a life of forgiveness towards those who have hurt you and wronged you, and I know in a room this size, there are those who have been hurt and have had trauma, abuse, or pain inflicted upon them that you didn't deserve and never saw coming, and the wounds go deep. And yet the key to forgiveness, extending forgiveness toward those who have caused the most pain to you, is to understand the amount of forgiveness that was extended to you when Jesus died for your sins on the cross and wiped away all of it. Wiped away all of it. And so our ability to forgive others is directly associated to have we received forgiveness for ourselves. At the end of the day, forgiven people forgive people. Forgiven people forgive people. It's one of the primary signs that you have actually been saved, because you now live with this spirit of gratitude on your life. You walk around with a new lease on life, with the primary focus of your heart being, Lord, I cannot believe what you've done for me. I can't believe what you've forgiven me from. I can't believe that you've brought me from death to life. Therefore, I want to be a conduit of forgiveness to others. I want to be one that extends the same forgiveness that you've shown me to others. And we're really going to unpack, what is forgiveness, what forgiveness is not, how do we forgive? We're going to dive into these things today, but first I want to share a letter where if I could write this letter to a younger version of myself, here's what I would say to me. Jonathan, each year that you grow older, you're going to learn something important about life on earth. And it's simply this: no one makes it to the finish line without getting hurt. No one makes it through this life without experiencing pain, loss, heartbreak, heartache, sorrow, and suffering. Jonathan, when you're young, most of the hurts and pains you will experience in this life are external pains. And in that moment, those are going to feel like a big deal. But I'm telling you right now, as you grow older, you're going to realize that the external pain is nothing compared to the internal pain. Jonathan, when you're learning to ride your bike as a young boy, you're going to fall down and scrape your knees. It's going to hurt. You're going to break a few bones. You're even going to fall through the ice one time when you're in 6th grade in Kentucky, and for a minute you think, this is the end, I'm going to die. Jonathan, you're not going to die, you're going to make it. But Jonathan, as you go through life, you're going to experience not just external pains, but internal ones. As you move from middle school into high school, you're going to experience the pain of rejection. Certain people who were once your close friends won't want to be around you anymore. You'll notice that you're not getting invited to hang when they all get together. Jonathan, you're going to experience your first heartbreak and betrayal when you fall head over heels in love with Elizabeth Starks in 7th grade. You're going to take her on a few dates and things are going to be looking great, but buckle up, Jonathan. Don't give your heart away too quick, because your best friend, Jesse, is a two-faced lying son of a gun, and he's going to steal your girl right from under your nose. The moment they meet each other, Jonathan, it's literally over for you. But don't sweat it too much, because in a few years, you're going to meet Lindsay, and you're going to be thanking Jesus that you didn't end up with Elizabeth Starks anyways. Seems like Lindsay is a consistent letter theme in my letters. As the years go by, you're going to experience much, much deeper wounds from family members or loved ones. And sometimes your mistakes are going to be the cause of your greatest pain. You're going to realize that those who you love the most have the greatest capacity to cause pain in your life. In 2017, when you're 33 years old, Jonathan, you're going to pack up your entire family, move from Atlanta to California to be the lead pastor of your first church. You're going to learn real quick that leadership and pastoral ministry is harder than you thought. You've experienced some hard things up to this point in your life, but brace yourself because you're about to enter the most difficult and painful season you have ever walked through. In 2020, a global pandemic is going to sweep across the world, and everything is going to get shut down, including your church. It's going to be one of the most grueling and divisive moments in American and world history. You will have to lead your congregation through political conflict, racial conflict, conflict over something called social distancing, face masks, vaccines, school closures, and global supply chain disruption. And no matter what you do as a leader, Jonathan, you're going to make someone mad or let someone down. Someone is going to have a negative opinion about your leadership, your family, the church, and even the future of the country. And everyone is going to have a very strong opinion about what you should be doing. It will be the most stressful, uncertain, confusing, exhausting, and painful time of your life. You will lose friends. You will be misunderstood, slandered, accused of being a coward, or accused of being hateful and insensitive. Jonathan, the pain caused by betrayal, slander, and accusation will hurt much deeper than anything you've experienced up to this point in your life. There will be unforgiveness, bitterness, and resentment growing in your heart. Jonathan, there will be a desire to lash out and fight back. You will be tempted to hold on to all the ways you've been wronged, to carry your hurts, your pain, and your offenses with you everywhere you go. But Jonathan, you have to trust me when I say this. It might sound impossible or even unrealistic, but you must choose to forgive and let it go. Learn to let it go quickly, because unforgiveness, anger, resentment, and bitterness, in the end, they don't serve you at all. They don't fix the problem. They will weigh you down, keep you stuck, stress you out, fill you with anger. They will end up hurting the people you love, and in the end, you will learn that resentment and bitterness are like steel chains locking you in a prison of your own making. No matter how bad it hurt, no matter how deep the wound, you will never experience freedom and healing until you choose to forgive and learn to let it go. I think forgiveness is probably one of the most relevant and difficult topics, if we stop to think about it, that we may encounter in this whole series of Letters from My Future Self. As I've said, it's something we all need desperately from God, and it's something we need to learn how to give to others. And some of you in the room today might be sitting there thinking to yourself, that sounds nice, Pastor. I've tried forgiveness. I've tried letting things go, but I just can't. It's too painful. The hurt runs too deep. I don't know how to let this go. And what I want to say is this: forgiveness is not a one and done thing. We're going to talk about what forgiveness is not. But I will say this: forgiveness is the doorway into healing. It's the doorway, it's the beginning of a journey into wholeness and healing for you. And it's a conscious decision to let things go. To let things go, including, for many of us in the room, letting ourselves off the hook. Some of you, I can speak to myself. I've had seasons in my own life where I have screwed up in ways that I never dreamed possible until I did it. And it's one of those things where we can live under the shame and unforgiveness and resentment towards ourselves. And until we receive forgiveness and forgive ourselves, we won't live into a lifestyle of forgiveness toward others. And as I was thinking about it this week, I thought, man, our life, if we wanted to depict in a visual illustration what life can be like, as we move through life, we pick up wounds. And it's kind of like nails. And some of the nails are little, they're not big. Some of the wounds that we've experienced are very small, like getting my heart broken by my 7th grade girlfriend. In the moment, that felt massive, right? But looking back on the story of my life, I learned, you're gonna live, Jonathan, that wasn't too bad, right? But there are other things that have happened to me that were much bigger. and much more painful seasons that I've walked through, betrayals or slanders or accusations or different things that you and I have endured that felt deep and big, and they're lodged into us. And what happens is, as we go through life and we collect these painful, traumatic things that have happened to us, we have this tendency to hold on to them. And when we hold on to these things through life and when we carry them forward into our life, I just threw a nail on the floor. Careful, don't walk down there. What happens is we break open the wounds again. We don't allow the wounds to heal. It's like we keep reopening the wound. And friends, scars are not a bad thing. Scars are actually a sign of healing. But when we can't release the pain of our past and we keep holding on to the nails and the trauma and the pain from our past, we are essentially reopening the wounds and not allowing our soul the capacity to heal. We're not giving ourselves the opportunity to heal. We're living in the pain of our past. And forgiveness, friends, forgiveness is the only way the pain of your past stops controlling your future. It's the only way the pain of your past stops controlling your future. But we have to understand what forgiveness is and what it isn't, because I think there's a lot of misconceptions about what forgiveness is. So I want to start with what forgiveness is not. Forgiveness is not forgetting. Ooh, come on, somebody. One of the worst phrases I think we've ever picked up, forgive and forget. Good luck with that. Your brain isn't even biologically wired that way. If something horrible or traumatic has happened to you, your brain will naturally fixate on the pain of your past so that you don't experience it again in your future. Forgiveness is not the same thing as forgetting. Being able to forget what happened to you is not the prerequisite to your decision to forgive, okay? Forgiveness is not excusing the behavior. It's not saying that whatever was done to you was okay. It wasn't. It hurt. It went deep. It caused you pain or trauma. Forgiveness is not reconciliation. Forgiveness allows reconciliation to be possible, but there are some situations you will walk through in life where reconciliation with the other person is not possible. And your ability to forgive that person is not the same thing as your ability to reconcile with that person. Forgiveness is a choice to lay down the hurt that was done to you by that person, whether or not they ever come to you and apologize, whether or not they ever come to you to reconcile or you go to them. Forgiveness can happen apart from that. It's a personal choice in your own soul. Forgiveness is not dependent on an apology. Forgiveness is not a feeling. It's not a feeling. Friends, feelings in life should follow your choices, not the other way around. If your choices follow your feelings, hear me when I say this, you'll end up making some really bad choices. You might feel angry. You might feel a desire for revenge. Whatever you're feeling in the moment, if that's what's dictating all your decisions and choices, it can lead you down a very dark path. However, if you choose forgiveness, if you choose to release that person, feelings of peace, contentment, healing, and wholeness can and will eventually follow your choices. But forgiveness is not a feeling, it's a choice. Forgiveness is not fair. It's not getting justice. Forgiveness is saying, I'm letting you go from the pain that you've caused me. I'm letting the pain of my past go, whether it ever gets made right or not. Some things that have been done to you will never be made right. And yet, the invitation to forgive still stands. Forgiveness is not a one-time event. It's not a one-time event. Oftentimes, the pain of our past, it continues to rear its ugly head. I know for me, it seems to always hit at like 3 a.m. in the morning. I wake up, I remember something that's been done to me or said or some, conflict that happened from years ago, and I will find myself like thinking of what I should have said in that moment at 3 a.m. in the morning. This is your pastor. Pray for him, okay? I'm not proud of it. I'm just saying, even in those moments in the middle of the night, I forgive again. I release again. I let go. I'm not allowing that thing to dictate my sleep or my peace in this moment. Yes, that hurt. Yes, that was painful. It doesn't have to be fixed always. I can still let it go. Friends, this is so important to understand. Forgiveness is not dependent on the other person. In many ways, our choice to forgive has nothing to do with the other person. Yes, that person has wronged you or hurt you, but think about this. Jesus forgave his murderers, and not a single one of them apologized for hanging him on the cross. His forgiveness was not dependent on an apology or a repentant heart. He still extended forgiveness. Forgiveness has everything to do with you making a conscious decision to set your heart free from the chains of resentment because of what that person did to you. But it's not dependent on that person. Forgiveness is a deliberate choice to release your resentment, bitterness, anger, or hatred towards someone who has harmed you, regardless of whether they deserve it or not. Regardless of whether they deserve it or not. Forgiveness is not saying it's okay. It's a choice to release the one who has wronged you. Forgiveness is not the same as healing. Forgiveness doesn't mean you're healed from the hurt that was caused you. It doesn't mean you've forgotten about what was done to you. But it does mean you're making a conscious choice to let the resentment and bitterness go so that the journey of healing can begin. Forgiveness is the doorway to healing. It's not the same thing as healing. You can think of it like this. How many of you have been tubing before? Like at the lake, tubing? Dangerous, right? Awesome, but dangerous. I remember growing up, Lindsay's parents had a lake house. They had a boat. We would head out there in the summers. And when I first started dating Lindsay in high school, her dad would take us out tubing. And I'm convinced that, the job of a father-in-law with with the guy who's dating his daughter is very simple. He's just going to try and kill that guy while he's driving the boat. And the goal of the future son-in-law or the person that's dating the daughter is simply to prove your manhood by not getting thrown off the tube. And so I remember getting on the tube for the first time, like my heart is pounding, and I'm like, all right, I'm gonna wrap my arm through all the different things and grab it on this side and then wrap this one through and grab. So even if I get slung off, my arms are still attached and I won't come off. The problem with that strategy is when the driver literally wants you to die and begins making figure eights in the cove and kicking up these massive waves, and suddenly you find yourself flying sideways through the air at 90 miles an hour towards a massive wave that knocks the wind out of you, and then your tube flips and you begin getting drug under the water, and you let go with your hands, but your arms are still attached. In that moment, you do believe you're going to die. That is I didn't die, I'm here, I'm standing here, but that did happen once or twice. But what I want to say is sometimes forgiveness feels like that. Sometimes we are emotionally wrapped up so deeply, and there's deep healing that needs to happen. The pain has sort of intertwined itself with our soul for years, and even though you let it go, it's still hanging on to you. And there are moments where it's hanging on to you so fiercely that it's dragging you under the water. And what you have to realize is the act of letting go, forgiving, choosing to forgive, eventually it is what leads to the untangling of your soul so that you can come above the water and live in freedom and joy and happiness and peace. But sometimes that takes time. It takes time. And forgiveness, right, is about letting go, releasing others from the prison of your resentment because it is too heavy for your soul to carry that. And it's time for your soul to be set free in such a way that you experience the freedom of releasing that person from the prison of your resentment, because what happens is this: by keeping them in the prison of your resentment, you're actually putting a chain around your own heart. And you're the one who ends up suffering in the end. And Jesus knew this. Jesus knew this, and there's this amazing story in Matthew 18. I don't have time to read, it's like the whole chapter. I don't have time to read the whole thing, but Matthew 18, 21 to 35, Jesus tells the parable of the unforgiving servant. And the parable is set up like this. I want to tell you the story of what happens here. Because Peter comes up to Jesus, and he asks Jesus a very serious question. He goes, Jesus, if a brother harms me, if someone wrongs me, how many times should I forgive him? And then Peter feels pretty proud of himself in this moment. He goes, up to 7 times? How about 7? That feels pretty generous, Jesus. And the reason Peter would have felt proud of himself is because the rabbinic tradition in that day said, here's the deal. If somebody harms you or wrongs you, you should forgive them 3 times. But if they do it a 4th time, you should cut that person out of your life and never associate them with them again. Because it's proving that they're an unsafe person, and it's proving that they're not repentant, they're not going to change, and they're going to keep hurting you. You don't need relationship with them. Now, there's some real practical wisdom in that. The truth is, you're probably not going to stay in friendship with somebody that keeps betraying you, slandering you, or treating you horribly for very long. There's nothing like that to destroy a friendship. And in some situations, those realities are toxic, and you don't need to be in that anyways. And so Peter comes along, and he's like, okay, how many times should I forgive? Up to 7 times? Well, let's double the number that the rabbis, that the Pharisees were teaching. And Jesus goes, well, Pete, nice try. Let's up the ante a little bit here. Not 7 times, but 70 times 7 times. He just blows it out of the water. I mean, in fact, relationally speaking, that sounds absurd. To stay in relationship with a person, not talking about marriage, because trust me, in marriage it's going to be like thousands upon thousands of forgiveness in both directions. But we're talking about somebody who has wronged you, probably in a business situation, probably in a relational situation. How many times should you extend forgiveness to that person, right? And Jesus is like 70 times 7. And what he's not saying is like, okay, 490 times is the limit. The moment you hit 491, like you're keeping a tally in a journal somewhere, they're at 365. I got a little ways to go. That's not what he's talking about, right? Why is he raising the ante so much? Because he's saying, look, it doesn't matter how many times you've been wrong. Yes, that relationship may go away, but if you've been wronged that many times, it doesn't matter how bad it is or how many times you've been wronged. Living in unforgiveness is always bad for you. So you should keep extending it as many times as you need so that you don't live in prison or in the chains of unforgiveness yourself. You have to live a life of forgiveness for the sake of your own soul. And he goes, let me tell you a story. Let me tell you a parable. There was a king of a kingdom, and he decided to settle accounts with his servants. When he began to settle the accounts, a servant was brought to him who owed him 10,000 talents of silver. That number meant nothing to me when I read that the first time. I did a little research. How much is 1 talent of silver worth? It's a 75-pound block of silver. It is worth 20 years' wages in the ancient world. 10,000 talents. I mean, we're talking about like 5,000 lifetimes worth of wages that this guy owed the king. I did a little currency translation from ancient to modern, tried to use sort of, 20 years wages at minimum wage. If I adjusted for inflation, what would that be in modern day dollars? It was roughly $4.8 billion. So Jesus sets up this example with a servant who owed him an unforgivable debt, a debt that was beyond anything he could repay. And this man begins to beg the king, please have mercy on me. And then he gives the king a ridiculous promise. He goes, I promise I'll pay it back. Right, bro. Not if you had 10,000 lifetimes could you pay that back. You're never going to be able to pay that back. And yet the king extended forgiveness to the servant. Now that servant left the presence of the king, and as the story goes, Jesus says that servant went out and found someone that owed him about $4,000. Owed him about 300 denarii. And the servant began to choke that man and said, pay me right now. Pay me what you owe me or I'm going to throw you in prison. And that man begged and pleaded with the same words that servant had begged the king just a few days before. He said, please give me time, I'll pay you back. Please don't throw me in prison, I'll pay you back. And the man said, nope, you're going to jail until you can pay off every penny of what you owe me. Now the king heard about it and he called the wicked servant back into his presence. And he goes, look, I gave you mercy. I extended you forgiveness. Should you not have extended it to that man? The point in giving you mercy was that now you would be an agent of mercy to others. I forgave you an unforgivable amount of debt. And you turned around and threw that guy in jail who owed you $4,000. The king is saying, I want my kingdom to be filled with people that have been so wrecked and radically changed by the forgiveness of God that they become conduits of forgiveness to others. They become conduits of the grace of God to others because mercy is not giving someone what they deserve. That wicked servant deserved prison, but the king gave him mercy. And then grace is giving someone what they do not deserve. He gave him freedom. He gave him a new life. He set him free. And he goes, now I want you to be a conduit of mercy and grace to others. I want my kingdom to be filled with others who, because they have received such extravagant forgiveness from the king, they now extend it to others. And yet that wicked servant did not do that. And he, in the end, check this out, he was the one who was thrown back in prison while the man that he did not forgive was set free. What a powerful picture of what forgiveness is. If we don't choose to live in forgiveness, we are the ones that end up in prison. We are the ones who end up bound by our own resentment. I'm not going to have time to go through all of these, but take a photo of this because it's important. Why should we forgive? Because resentment is heavy. It's a heavy burden. Proverbs 27:3 says, a stone is heavy and sand is weighty, but resentment is heavier than both. It's heavier than both. Unforgiveness is paralyzing for your soul. Do you remember the man in Mark 2, the paralyzed man in Mark 2? His friends put him on a mat and they brought him to Jesus and they ripped off the roof. They made a hole in the roof. They lowered him down to Jesus. And there this paralyzed man is laying before Jesus and everyone's watching like, what is Jesus going to do right here? And the very first thing Jesus does is he forgives that man his sin. He extends forgiveness. And I remember the first time I read that thinking, Jesus, that was nice and all, but you probably need to fix his legs. He's paralyzed, right? Everybody around that man would have been thinking, Jesus, this man's greatest need is his paralyzed legs. That's why he's on a mat. That's why his friends had to rip a hole in the roof and lower him down in front of you. And Jesus goes, wrong. His greatest need is forgiveness. If I fix his legs and don't forgive his soul, he walks around healthy on earth but still ends up in hell apart from me forever. His greatest need is forgiveness. And the healing follows the forgiveness. Think about this. When we receive forgiveness for ourselves, it brings healing into every other area of our lives. Every other area of our lives. Unforgiveness is unhealthy. There's tons of research about how it affects us. Unforgiveness becomes a prison of our own making, and unforgiveness spreads to others. It ends up affecting all of our relationships around us. So how do we forgive? I want to hit these very quickly. Acknowledge the offense. It was real. You have to name it. Release the offender. Knowing that unforgiveness is actually what keeps you in prison, not them. You release them, regardless of reconciliation or not. You grieve. It's okay to grieve and feel the pain of what's been done. You seek reconciliation if possible, but if not, you can still extend forgiveness, and then always receive first forgiveness for yourself. Receive first forgiveness for yourself. So we close our time together. I want to just invite you to stand. We're going to close with just a quick chorus of a worship song. I know there was a lot that we went through today, but I so want this for you. I so desire that the nails from our past could be let go of, could be released, so that we could find freedom and healing from the wounds that have been caused to us. And if you're in this room today and you need to release some things or someone, I just want to encourage you to kind of put your hands in front of you, open-handed. And let's go to the Lord in prayer for just a moment. Say, Lord, help me to let this go. Just in your heart, pray to him. Say, Lord, help me to release the pain of my past so it no longer is affecting my future or my present. Lord, help me to forgive where it feels impossible. Help me to understand the debt you've forgiven me so that I can extend forgiveness to others. Help me to be an agent of forgiveness in this life. In Jesus' name. Let's sing this one last chorus together before we close.